You are listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe.
Hello, I'm Eric Lalor. You're very welcome to episode 31 of House of Football with Sports Joe. Delighted to say, joined in studio today by our man from Joe, Enda Coll, and making his debut on House of Football today, the Graham Gartland, League of Ireland legend. How are you?
I wouldn't say that now. Yeah, I'm good, yeah.
You are now, in fairness, man. A man has won 3 FAI Cups in a row. That's something to behold. Like, in this day and age when, especially as a postman, FAI Cup finals are a precious commodity, and we're delighted to even get to a final, but we'd like to win some. But you won 3 in a row at the old Lansdowne Road.
Yeah, it was brilliant, yeah. I was, do you know what? Some of the best nights of my life.
I can imagine,
they were brilliant, yeah.
But also as well, the great thing about it as well, Graham, not with like, you know, not fashionably big clubs. Longford Town, 2 in a row, and then moved the draw to that and win 3 in a row. Like, that's just...
Yeah, like, look, there's an element of luck to it as well, that I landed into a great team in Longford. What a group of players.
Alan Matthews
was in charge, Aaron Callahan was the assistant, and then, like, you look at the team, we're having a 20-year reunion this year at the Cup final, and I look at the team, Stephen O'Brien in goal, Digger O'Brien, Barry Ferguson, like my best friend in football and outside of football, Sean Dillon, was in the team at the time. I'd known Sean since he was 16. I'd be godfather to Sean's eldest son, Shay. People like that for any kid coming back from the UK who was a bit broken, and I was probably a little bit broken coming back from the UK, going into that dressing room where it was like, look, we're going to help. Everybody helped and everybody dug in and everybody, you know, you turned up on your first day. I remember turning up my first match to play for Longford, like, and all I had was my wash bag, like, and I was like, there's no towel put out, no pair of pants to wear under your...
What you were used to.
Yeah, what you were used to. Like, you're like, bring your own gear. Like, you know? and that level of realism to go, look, you're back here now. But you need that as well to go, look, you just need to reset. And like, they took any bravado I had out of me because, like, again, I would have acted like I thought it was the man, but underneath it all, it was built on sand, like, at the time. And it gave you a realism and look, this is where we're at. But the cup finals were brilliant. I remember we played Galway in the semi-final and we beat them 1-0. Sean Francis scored, and that got us into the final. And then I was on the bench for the first cup final in 03. Shane Barrett scores the last minute winner against Pats. Well, not a last minute winner. He breaks away and scores and seals, and we knew it was done. We had an unbelievable night that night. But see, winning it with the provincial sides, as you call it, like it does. Look, there's an All-Ireland feel to it at times. You're going back and the whole town is out.
That's what I was going to say. There must have been some feverish celebrations down the likes of Longford and Drogheda, and the build-up even, like, the flags everywhere.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like, and then you see how much it means to them, and it still means to them to this day. And then in 04, I have a player in my team that was from Longford. He wasn't even born when he won it. But like, he goes,
to make you feel old.
Yeah, and he sort of goes to me, Longford won a cup? And I'm going, yeah, we did. Like, and then the 04 final was brilliant because myself and Sean Dillon played centre back together. We were only 21 at the time, and just playing beside him was great. And we were 1-0 down, and we came back. And Paul Keegan, that played for Bowes.
Yeah,
now you
player.
had 2 Paul Keegans. One of them I played with at Drogheda the following year. Paul Keegan, the blonde hair.
Oh yes.
He hadn't scored for us all year and scores the winner in the cup final.
Yeah.
And I remember me and him were injured in the first round down in Cork, and we were jogging around the pitch. This is my memory. He had plantar fasciitis and I was coming back from a groin injury. And we said we'd be back for the final, like, just joking. But that year we had 3 replays. Like, we Shamrock Rovers in a replay that we beat them. We Athlone in a replay. We went back to their place and beat them. Same way we went back to Rovers, beat them. And then we had Drogheda in the semi-final, and we went back and beat them. Last minute winner, Sean Dillon, curled it in the top corner. And then the following year with Drogheda was brilliant as well. Like, it was, like, again, you're just like my first 3 years in the league, and I'm in 3 cup finals.
Spoiled.
Yeah, and I'm like same pegs and all, like, joking, but sort of being a little bit cocky, but it was more just to relax everybody, and I was just enjoying it and took it all in. And it was weird. I was sitting with my mum and dad afterwards up there, and the lads are all jumping around, and I felt old, and I'm like only 22, but I think by the age of 24 I'd won everything in the league, with throwing in the Satantas and League Cups and stuff. I'd won everything in the league.
You won the league with Drogheda then, didn't you?
Yeah. And that was like I said, I came back the summer of 03. I just turned 20, where I didn't know if I was going to play football anymore. Just as I was turning 25, I'd won everything in that short space of time. So
when you say you weren't sure you were going, that's just part of the heartbreak of being, returning home, almost with your tail between your legs, like a lot of players coming back from England.
Yeah, it was like, and I have to credit my family a lot as well as that Longford dressing room. But I'd been let go from Barnsley. I'd signed for Barnsley when I was 17. I'd stayed and done my leaving cert, so I went over late. And Barnsley had made a really big deal about getting me because I had a few clubs in for me at the time. Spurs had come over and offered me deals. Like Everton and Leeds were looking at me. I started playing midfield then. And then Barnsley come in, and just the way they approached it, I just thought, that's for me. And I knew, to be honest with you, I probably knew me level as well. I thought, look, Barnsley probably suits me. And it's a really good academy at the time. Everything was built beside the stadium. It was brilliant. But then 3 managers later with the first team, and the ITV deal had gone bust. So we'd a massive squad. Like, so I would have played a lot of reserve games in my first year in Barnsley. The following year, you couldn't get into the reserve squad.
Right.
Like, it was mad.
Stacked.
Yeah, so I was playing at 17 but couldn't get in at 18. And then I probably made a decision to go to Dundee United then for a year. And it wasn't a great decision my end. But that was when I just got really bad habits, wasn't great, was still hurting from the fact that didn't know how to handle it, like, My wife said to me the other day, she sort of cracked the joke about football. She says, that's football's your mistress. And I was like, I sort of looked at her and I went, no, you are, like. Football was my first love. I says, you came in off the back of it. And she just started laughing. But it was that hurt and rejection of something that you loved, that you thought, why you caused me so much pain when all I ever did was love you, as in the football.
Unrequited love.
Then I came home and I was still up and down, didn't really know myself. And then like I said to him, my family would have been really supportive of me. I have a big family. My sister, it's the eldest, and I have 2 older brothers and a younger brother. My mum and dad at the time were like, look, we're not going to let you fail here. So we're going to get you going, and wherever it needs to be to get you going. And then I became really close to Sean Dillon, and Sean's the nicest guy in the world. He's probably too nice. But he made me realise, look, it's okay to be nice and play football, but I played it with an edge a little bit. But he made me realise, it's okay to be vulnerable at times, because he was just the nicest guy in the world and everybody, but he got a bit of an edge then by being around me. So that type of stuff happened. But yeah, a lot of it, going into that dressing room at Longford, where there's no airs or graces, everybody helped, everybody picked up goals. You got slaughtered for, if you didn't do your job, you got slaughtered for the gear you wore, you got slagged about everything.
So you were quickly forced to grow up, kind of thing, and mature.
And realise, well, you still whinging about that?
Yeah.
Get over
yourself.
What was the reception like playing against players? Because I know a few stories of boys that came back from England, and that would have been like sort of sledging on the pitch, that, lads would give them abuse for not making it over in England.
Yeah, it wasn't really, I never really had any of that. You just, there was a lot of lads that had come through the league that had only played in the league, that would be but the league was really competitive at the time. I think people don't realise that, how, every team had one great striker in their team that you go up against, and then eventually, I think, so you'd have Bows that have Glenn Crowe, Shells would have Jason Bourne, you had, rest in peace, Mark Farron, you had Gary Beckett, then they brought in Kevin McHugh, then Cork had John O'Flynn and O'Callaghan.
So you came up against a lot
Kevin
of top
Doyle,
strikers.
Yeah. And they had gone, they had gone through something similar. So there was that thing of, but that's what the league was at the time. It was for players either staying with the game here or coming home. And a lot of the players in our team had done that. So Barry Ferguson come back from Coventry, Sean had come back from Villa.
Barry being the dad of Evan.
Exactly, yeah. And Evan was born the Saturday before the second cup final in 04.
Right.
And he got in trouble for coming to the final.
The baby?
Barry did.
Oh, right.
The baby. She's like, you're going to leave me in hospital. Barry was suspended. There's a shock. But and that's what it was. And then you had lads like the likes of Alan Murphy, say, who he's from Drogheda, like came through a Longford and only ever played in Ireland, and he's going, look, he give you a little bit of stick, like, you know, that's not done here, like,
right,
you know, you're only off the boat, you know, but it did make you grow up, like, and even when I went back over in 2009 to sign for St. Johnson, you're better for it, like, you know, you're able to handle the dressing room, you walk in, you know, you're more mature, you can handle the ups and downs of it a lot better than, but yeah, that, and even then going to Drogheda, even that winning mentality and that nastiness we had at Longford, like, we needed a little bit of that at Drogheda at the time, because the club was so heavily invested in that we were thought of as this people that something was throwing money at, and Paul was trying to build a team, and to be part of that was great as well, like, because you built something from nothing really, that the investment came in and we all signed, but it was a team that needed to gel. I think we had 12 new signings that first year, and to win the cup that year gave us a taste for it. And Paul done brilliant that year just to keep us going, because the first 4 months were absolute, like, some of the most grueling training sessions you'll ever do. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, like we would have done doubles on a Monday and a Tuesday with a gym session in between.
Wow.
And then you trained Wednesday, longer day Wednesday, in Thursday, game Friday. And we struggled at the start because we
just heavy legs and whatever.
Yeah, but he knew he was building something for the platform to last us for the next few years. And look, it was tough, like, you know. I remember the lads going, we need a day off. and Simon Webb actually.
Simon Webby.
Yeah, Webby, we need a day off. And I'm like, now I would have been a little bit probably vocal for my age at the time, but I was like, look, lads, I don't think we should ask for this. I'd already had me rows with Paul at the start of the year, so I was like, I don't think this is going to go well, lads. I'll be honest with you, but if it's democracy and we're all in it together as a team, then if you want to ask for a Wednesday off, like, but this isn't going to go well, like. So we asked for a Wednesday off, Paul, yeah, sort of, we'll think about it, yeah. I think about 3 weeks later, we drew a game, I lost the game. And it got brought back up, and I'm looking around the dressing room going, I told you this is going to go like this. He wasn't going to forget it. Like, but we had a reunion there. We played a game up in Drogheda for Brendan Loughlin, the kit man who passed away.
Oh, yeah.
And Paul came in, and he was brilliant. He was great. And all the lads were a bit like, jeez, he was so relaxed. And he was brilliant, and he was cracking jokes, and he was funny, and seeing a different side to him. And we were thinking, imagine he was a bit like that when we played, and just the intensity, but Paul didn't know any other way.
Yeah, that was his way, and that's what won him got him all his success, really, at the end of the day, wasn't it?
Even as a player, like, you talk about legends, like, what a career.
I remember as a little kid when he started out with Bowes. I actually remember him playing in that old Elvery's jersey that Bowes used to wear. Going, "Is Paul doing?" And he was brilliant even then. Yeah. And then he moved on to Rovers and Shells and all them other clubs. Just touching on Shamrock Rovers, Graham, they've all but confirmed 4 in a row now, barring the biggest collapse in Irish sporting history. I think they need a point against Pats, and even if they don't get that, they've 2 games against Cork and Sligo to get that point. Your impressions on Stephen Bradley and the job he's done at Shamrock Rovers, and also the comments he made that, you know, people seem to have this narrative that 4 in a row is good enough. Why not win 5 in a row, 6 in a row, 7 in a row?
Yeah, like, again, we were talking a little bit about it, that the last time Rovers done 4 in a row was 87, and then the team gets broken up and they leave Milltown, and the manager who had been part of that 4 in a row, I know there was 2 managers, was Keeley and Jim McLaughlin. He goes to Derry and takes a lot of the squad with him, and then Derry go and do a treble. And you're like, well, if the Rovers squad had stayed together in 87 and you had stayed in Milltown, would that success have continued? You probably would have said, yeah, judging by it. So I can see why Stephen's saying that comment regarding, well, the squad isn't moving anywhere. I'm not moving anywhere. We're here in Tallaght. We've a base. We've a training base. Everything's set up for continued success, and that's the way clubs should nearly be. Like, you know, that you're not guaranteeing success, but you're going to have a go at it every year because your structures are right. Yeah. And if your structures are right, it gives you that chance to have a go at it. And that's where I think he's coming from. Is like, well, the last time it was done, again, the team was broken up. They didn't have a ground. They didn't have a training base. The manager left. The players left. That's not happening this year. So I can see why he's saying that. And again, it's up to them to keep that going and keep them focused and keep it right. and then it's up to the other clubs to actually go and put
Catch
in a
up.
challenge.
Yeah.
And I think you see it with your team, Bows, where to get to a cup final this year is a great achievement for them, considering I always felt this year Bows were always going to go up because they were starting to train in the mornings again.
Yeah.
They had got the planning permission for the new stadium and all that stuff that goes with it. That gives the club a lift. And then obviously the training ground at DCU where they're training in the mornings, they were always going to have a kick. And they've had a kick at the start of the year where they were excellent. Having that consistency to mount the title challenge, I don't think was there. I think it was a little bit too soon.
Yeah.
But they're trying to put structures in that allows them that it's not just a flash in the pan that they get into a cup final, that it can be built on success. And you see most teams that do well, they're doing well because their foundations are good.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's a foregone conclusion now at this stage, and that Rovers will win 4 in a row.
Yeah, more or less. Like, I mean, if they don't, there's something seriously wrong there. But I think just to echo what Graham is saying, I think Shamrock Rovers have been the smartest club over the last couple of years, and that's why they have had the success. I always look towards their contract situation as the foundational structures that are in place that allow Rovers to continue their success. They're not constantly losing players. They're not losing their best players to other clubs just because they're not giving them an extra year on their deal. They're sending them down to 4-year deals. So they're going to be there. They're guaranteed to be there. And that definitely helps. In terms of like the 5 in a row, 6 in a row thing, the only thing I can see getting in the way of that is that Rovers have quite an old squad at the minute. Like, it helps because there are loads of experience there, and it's not as if they're over the hill completely. But in the next 2 to 3 years, you're probably looking at refreshing that a little bit,
absolutely,
and building a base. But they still do have those younger players coming through that have experience, but are also got like 4, 5, 6, 7 years still left in the tank. The likes of Neil Farrugia, for example, is like probably the best player in the league right now.
Yeah, I mean, how long can they hold on to him? That's the thing.
Well, you see, it's just about whether or not he stays in Ireland. I think that's the key part with Rovers, is that like there's the only question for whether a player is going to leave Rovers is if he's going to England. Yeah. It's not a question of where both have a great player. Okay, is he going to go to Rovers next year? Is he going to go to St. Pat's next year? Rovers don't really have that. There's nobody really poaching their players because of the contract situation. So I think they've been the smartest club. They deserve the success they've had. Stephen Bradley's done an excellent job, plays great football. It's just about whether somebody can challenge him, because I think this year there's been enough openings for clubs to take advantage of what Rovers, of some of Rovers' form over the course of the season, and it just hasn't been there. Maybe if John Daly had taken over Pats maybe a couple of weeks before that, it might have been a little bit closer. But yeah, I think until Bows have that structure.
I think that cleverness is what you said goes back to the likes of the Members Club originally, when they took over the club, and it got to 2011, 2012, and they realised, say, when Michael left. So when Michael left, he just won 2 in a row. He got to the group stages of the Europa League. It wasn't, obviously, Stephen's team gets to the Conference League, and they're both great achievements. But then what happens is Michael leaves, and within a year it's gone, where they're struggling, and they struggled for the next while. And I had conversations in 2012 with Jonathan Roach about, why are we training in the AUL? Why don't we have a Southside base? And I would have annoyed him a little bit, and he would have told me where to go, and we probably still have that relationship. But I think Jonathan Roach's vision with Noel Bourne at the time was, let's try and get something that lasts, that you have a base here. So when I played in 2012, they had the East Stand, the West Stand. Now they have the South and the North. So it's been built as well.
It must be 10,000 or something, isn't it? Yeah.
And then you go, well, the fact that I touched on this as well, that they sold 25% of their stake, the member stake. They sold it for I think it might have been 1 million or 2 million at the time to build Roadstone. So they're willing to.
So the investment, as you were saying, was put straight back into the club.
Put straight back into the club, exactly. So it's there. It's put straight back into the club, and the members need to take a lot of credit for that, because it was led by the members to go, look, we're going to sell what we think is valuable assets, which is 25% stake of the club, and reinvest it into the club, so that there's a structure there, and then there's a platform there for the young players to come through. And during that first time, Gavin Bazuna comes through. So Gavin comes through as an academy player, works under Shane Robinson for a good few years, then goes on to Stephen Bradley, and the lineage was great, and then he goes and makes the club X amount of money, and then people go, oh, well, that's a good investment. And then we get outside investment from Enda's mate, Dermot Desmond, comes over. And
Your mate, Enda?
Yeah, he knows him. He's a propagandist for Celtic. So he then comes and goes, well, I want to invest. But when people say invest, is they buy shares in the club. They don't invest every year. So it's still the members selling their shares to fund the club. And
yeah, so it's not a constant pouring of money into the club.
So,
yeah,
and that's not me being... people think, oh, you're coming on to defend. That's the truth of it, is they're not putting in money every year. It's still run through the members, and it's still... a lot of it is done through the volunteers and members still. So the members would have invested nearly 5 million in the club in the last 10 years through putting in money every week, their hours, and the fact that they sold assets, which was shares in the club, to reinvest back into the academy. So now we have an Astro pitch that has floodlights, we have a first team, or we have a training grass pitch that has floodlights, we have a 7-a-side pitch that have floodlights, we have an indoor hall with Astro on it, and we have an indoor gym. And that's all been built through investments by the members club. And when you realise that, and you go, when Enda said it's been a clever, it wasn't methodical, as in, because no football club is, because there's stuff that happens, moving parts, but it has been a plan that was put in to go, this is where you want to get to, and that's what's happened. When you say, I'm delighted you just said, look, they've been clever, and that's what's happened with it. But this myth that I think a lot of your Bows friends would throw out is that, oh, we have millionaire investors. No, your club's going to be worth something in a few years, and somebody's going to want to come in and buy that, and you have to decide whether you take that money to reinvest into the club or not. And if you say, no, we're happy to just be 100% fan owned, that's your decision.
I think they're happy to be 100% on because they have an investment called Evan Ferguson out there.
Yeah.
They're just waiting on that.
That's hopefully what
waiting to cash the chips in. But I think in the League of Ireland, especially over the last couple of years, the most stable club is the most successful club.
Of course.
Look at Dundalk. People thought that was always going to continue on just because of European football. And then it just falls apart because there's no real underlying structure in place. They're just relying on that success in the league. Rovers really aren't. If Rovers didn't win the league this year, they're not completely out of it. They wouldn't fall down the table. All the players wouldn't leave. They'd be back in the hunt the following year. I think that's probably what
and also best. if the club ever hit financial issues at the top end, you have a group of 19-year-olds, 17-year-olds and 15-year-olds ready to play, where when the last time the club, Drogheda was the same, when the club went, because there's nothing underneath it, your whole club can nearly go with one team.
Should look at Cork.
Yeah.
Cork,
your club can go with one team, and that's where I think the academy system deserves a lot more credit at the moment. It needs help. You can get onto that as well. The academies in this country need investment, need massive investment, but it stops clubs ever getting to the point where they just don't exist anymore. Like you're talking about the era I played in, there's teams in that era that just don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
They just fold. And that's where I think that's what the academy structures have brought, that if Bows ever struggled or if Rovers ever struggled, there's 17 and 19-year-olds only dying to play for them.
And of good quality as well. Yeah.
So that's where I think that the academy does deserve, the academies from around the country do deserve a lot of credit as well, you know.
But they need help. They definitely do. They need investment. And I mean, that's another conversation that we could do for hours. So right, we're going to move on to other football and matters now, Graham. I suppose we'll start off tonight. Champions League football starts off tonight. And it's the trailblazers of English football, Manchester United, are at home to Copenhagen. I suppose United have had, 3 wins in a row, which is unheard of recently. But they've been all struggling kind of wins. There's all the talk, all the noise from outside the club. The Radcliffe's going to buy 25% of the club. He's going to look after the sporting project. Ten Hag, there's rumours that Radcliffe might replace Ten Hag. Just your feelings on Manchester United as they are at the moment, Graham.
I thought Ten Hag done really well last year, considering I think it's a mess from all around at the moment. Looking in, I don't have a lot of people that I'd know around Manchester that would have any great insight to it, but it's only looking in from observations and working and being in football for the last 20 odd years, 25. I think when there's uneasiness at any club, it trickles down. It always does. I think with the way it's been run and the structures, I think the signings haven't been great. I don't think they've signed really well. I heard a different conversation where, you don't really improve players, but when you go to them, your career struggles as well. But then when you move on from United, you're not exactly lighting her up neither. Like, so it's like it's nearly
It kills your whole career.
Yeah, you stagnate to a point where you can't really re-rescue it. I didn't see the Mason Mount one. I didn't see that signing, and I think when you play Casemiro with Bruno Fernandes and Mount either side of him, I think it's exposing him. I think if you're going to play with one of them, you need to play with maybe two sitters and get more control of the game, and then trust that you have enough firepower in Fernandes, Rashford, and the forward players. Højlund, is that how you pronounce it?
Højlund, yeah.
But I just think it's easy when you give a player a group of players an out, as in this structure isn't great, they'll take it.
Right.
And that happens in football clubs. Or something else isn't right. Oh, well, that's on you then. And I think United have that at the moment where they're all looking to go, well,
there's almost an excuse culture.
Correct. And then what happens is that excuse culture gives players an out, and they'll more than happy to take it when it gets tough. And I think that's what's happening at United looking in.
Well, and there's 2 games now coming up against Copenhagen, and they must wins, aren't they? If they want to continue in the Champions League.
Yeah, they need to win tonight, essentially. Like it shows you how bad things are getting when a club like United are bottom of a group that has Copenhagen and Galatasaray in it. Like, that should have been a given. And under Alex Ferguson, it would have been a given. I think the structure is such a mess that it's almost hard to give Ten Hag too much stick. But I think he still deserves a little bit as well. Like, if you look at what he's brought to the club, I mean, Solskjaer was lauded for really good results, but he was also given no credit at all for bringing forward the club in terms of what he did and the style of playing counter-attacking football. He was criticised heavily for. Erik ten Hag's come in and he said, "Oh, we're going to be the best transitional team in Europe." That's counter-attacking football. Yeah. It's the same thing. He's doing the exact same thing, and it's because the players that he has are suited to that, but the players that he has aren't good enough. And the players that he's brought to the club aren't good enough. But that all comes back to the structure in place, because all the signings that Ten Hag has brought to the club have been Ten Hag's signings. They've been Højlund, who he knew, Anthony, who he worked with, Onana, who he knew. Like, all these players are connected to Ten Hag in some way or shape or form. So that tells me there's no scouting network in place at United that's worth any bit of salt. And Ten Hag is just bringing in people that he trusts that will do a job for him, and that's just not how you can operate at a high level at all.
Yeah.
And not at Manchester United. Yeah. Like, if you look at Man City, they've got more staff than every other club in England for a reason. It's because they've got expertise all over the place, and it's showing on the pitch now. So,
and the one thing about City as well, what I would say in terms of their transfer business, like, obviously they have those, they're cash rich, oil rich, whatever, but they still don't pay over the odds, I don't think, for players. Like, if
maybe Grealish, I would have thought at the
maybe,
time.
Yeah,
at the time he was 100 million, but it's the English tax on him,
isn't it? Just, yeah.
But then you get Haaland for 50, like, that's where you go, well, he's done well there, like,
Yeah. They tend to walk away if they have an idea of what the price they should pay for the player, and if that club asks for more, they just walk away. And I think
their willingness to move on players is that stood out in the last couple of years.
When you think what they've lost in the last couple of years,
you go, look, good luck.
United can't get rid of their players. Like, they should have got rid of McTominay, whether McTominay's doing a good job this year or not. Should have got rid of Maguire. Couldn't get rid of him. Couldn't get him out the door.
Man, the match on Saturday.
And like, they've got all these players on huge contracts. That's one of the reasons that they can't get rid of them. So it is a disaster. It's a soap opera, and you're almost wishing that they'd just stick a camera in Old Trafford and be done with it. Make it a reality TV show and just forget about the football, because that's what the owners want. They just want the club to be in the public eye as much as possible and just bleed the club dry. That's essentially what they're doing.
I suppose while we're talking about Manchester United, it'd be remiss of us not to mention the passing of Sir Bobby Charlton. Yeah. I think a name just synonymous with football across the world. I don't care what people's allegiances are. When they thought of Bobby Charlton, they thought about football. And it just your thoughts on Bobby Charlton?
Yeah, I've been talking about him a little bit this morning to other people and smiling, and I remember the World Cup Panini book where he had the greatest goals. Remember in 1990, and then his was in it in '66 where he goes on the dribble and bangs in the top corner.
Oh, Mexico,
yeah. And then you're going to your dad, like, who's he? And then he's going, "Oh, wait, I'll show you." And my dad was a Leeds fan. But all his friends were United fans, so he used to have to go over to the United games because they were all going. So he was like, I'm going. And he was raving about Bobby Charlton. And then we love George best, but he says he's never seen a ball hit as well as Bobby Charlton hit one. I was talking about it today where they show clips of him playing. You know somebody's really two-footed when they're willing to play with the outside of the boot off both feet.
Right.
You know that?
Yeah.
Have you ever really look at somebody who's two-footed?
Okay.
You realise Lubo Maracic done it, but that willingness that I'm going to play off the outside of my foot around the corner with either foot. That's a really tough thing to do in the heat of a game because you'll normally just play, well, it's on my left side and I'm left-footed, I'm going to go. For me to go across that and play with my right foot, and they show clips of him jinking and moving the ball with the outside of each foot, and that means he's bringing somebody close so he can do it. And then you're like, the power he had, even in his running power and the gliding and the one that chokes you up is the clip when Jack comes out and says, "Look, he's the greatest player I've ever seen, and he's my brother."
And you called him our kid.
Yeah, and he's my brother, and that just chokes you up. That you realise like he's probably watched them all the way through him, and he said the story he tells. You ever hear the story Jack tells about when he gets called up to play for England?
Yes,
he was at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
He's just beaten Man United at Old Trafford. And he's got called up and he walks straight into the United dressing room and he goes to Bobby, "I've just been called up for England." And he goes, "That's great, Jack, but he's just beat us here. You need to get out the dressing room." And you're
Jack
like,
oblivious to
that
it.
thing of sharing that something with your brother, like
Yeah.
that would have been unbelievable. Like, and again, I think he's the greatest English player of all time. I think
Yeah, I mean, when you think what he's gone through, when you think of his life, and we were having a little chat earlier on, like, you know, coming from the Munich one.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I mean, to do what he'd done in general was impressive. To do what he did in his career, having gone through the Munich air disaster, like, I mean, there's some harrowing tales of him pulling his teammates out of the plane. It seemed to affect him to begin with, but then to rebuild Manchester United with Matt Busby and then go on to win the European Cup, win the World Cup, be the top goal scorer for United for so long, England's top goal scorer. And I think the credit to him goes that we talk about him as Bobby Charlton, the footballer, and not Bobby Charlton, the guy who survived the Munich air disaster. Like, nobody unless somebody mentioned that to you, you don't really think of that to begin with Bobby Charlton. You just think about how good he is.
Yeah.
And like, one of the things that I was saying to you is that when you watch old clips of football from the 50s, you're like, it was a different game. Like, you know, you see the way boys are kicking the ball and running. Bobby Charlton looked like a modern footballer.
That's a great show.
He kicked the ball.
He could fit in any era.
He could fit in any era because he had the same running gait as modern footballers. He kicked the ball much harder than everyone else. He was absolutely.
Not forgetting those balls were different.
Yeah,
types of
exactly.
balls back then.
Big leather balls filled with water. Like, and he was battering them into the top corner. Like, I'd love to have seen, like, if you put, like, sort of took him a video and put him into modern football, I think he'd still probably would have been one of those footballers that would have just transcended the era that he was playing in. He was just phenomenal.
I agree with the movement thing. You see old videos and the lads chopping and you go, oh, and then he's just doing everything in motion.
Yeah.
And it's a flow to him. And then the power kicks in where you're like, oh my God, like, and the strikes.
So we just have a look back at the Premier League over the weekend. Arsenal came back from the death to draw with Chelsea, having gone 2-0 down. Both keepers, I suppose, had a nightmare. Raya and Sanchez, and obviously there's this debate going on at Arsenal, raging debate going on, Ramsdale or Raya. Like, Graham, from your experience of football, do you think for the squad it's important that the goalkeeper, of all positions, the goalkeeper knows he's the number one? Or is it healthy, as Arteta is thrown out there, that it's healthy to have competition? But is that leaving a little bit of doubt in the keeper's mind, or what?
I think it's healthy to have competition as long as the people that are in the competition are mentally secure enough to know that I'm gonna have to fight for my place, and that has to be on them. I do feel you need trust from your manager. I think someone like myself, I wasn't a goalkeeper, but I played best when I knew the manager trusted me, that even if I did make a mistake, he knew you were going to react in the right way for me. But I don't get this thing where there can't be competition for spots as well, where goalkeepers have to be secure in their, like, you're secure in your performances. That's what keeps you number one, how you perform. I seen the goal that he concedes. Ray is always, the reason he brought him in was to take more crosses and deal with crosses into the box. And he's always on the front foot, ready to go, and he just gets caught out. Like it's a miss hit. Like it happens. Happened to David Seaman when he was at Arsenal. Happened to him against Ronaldinho.
The World
Happened to him
Cup,
against the boy from the halfway line net. I think his name was Neymar as well, was it?
Oh,
Naeem,
yeah, the Spurs lad, yeah.
And so it can happen, like, but I don't agree with this thing of, well, I need to know I'm number one. You become that, you get that need when you perform, and then you go, right, there you go. Like I even at Drogheda, Stephen Gray was the left-sided centre-back when I came in, and he was in the team of the year I signed, and then eventually, now I'd be really good friends with Gray to this day. But it was a competition, like, and I knew if I don't perform in consistent games here, he's going to take my spot, and that's the way it goes. And then even at St Johnson, I dislocated my shoulder up in Aberdeen, and I came back, and I ended up playing way too early on it. The manager just pushed me, I need you, and I'm getting injections into my shoulder, and playing, I think 5 weeks after I popped my AC joint, which should have been a 3-month job. And I'm going, and then Michael Dewberry walks in the door.
Michael Dewberry?
Yeah, so he signs and he takes me spot but the manager was keeping me going because we'd no one else, and then my spot's gone, and I'm thinking I've just played through excruciating pain.
Well, that's one thing that I do question about this situation is that, like, I know obviously Arteta is a good manager. That's not what I'm saying when I say this, but I do get a whiff of bullshitter off him a little bit, like in some of the things that he says and the way that he spoke about, like, how the goalkeeping position is the exact same as an outfield position. If one player's not playing well, the other player will be in. But I suppose the real first test of that was, okay, when it comes to the big games, who's it going to be, Ramsdale or Raya? And Raya got the shout. And now the next test of this is going to be, okay, Raya's had a bad game now. Is Ramsdale going to be substituted in the same way as an outfield player would? Or were you bullshitting him? Because I think that does a lot between the trust of the manager, that, like, kind of like what you're saying there, is that when push came to shove, you were actually put to the side and this other player was brought in. So it's like, what does that do for the relationship between Ramsdale and Arteta?
Yeah, that's a great point. And like you said, it's that thing of, like, you've said all this. I agree with you with Arteta's trying to appease everybody. He's trying to appease both players and the press at the time who are constantly asking him about it. And he comes out with this thing where you're like, yeah, but the proof is in the pudding, is that if he deems Raya's mistake enough to drop him, will he stand over dropping him?
Yeah.
And I don't look. I think his pass out isn't great. I think obviously the cross doesn't, but he's brought in to play. He's brought in for them two reasons: is that he's better with the ball at his feet, and he's better on crosses. Yeah. So he's brought him in for that. So if them two things start letting him down, then he has to stand over not playing him. But I don't think he was that bad.
After one game, and
correct.
That's what makes it so hard as well. Is that okay? So he said this about Ramsdale, but if he drops Raya after one bad game, what does that say to Raya? It's like, oh, like you don't have any confidence then as a goalkeeper.
We even like different things pop up when you're talking and remind you. Like Dan Connor was their goalkeeper at Drogheda, and Paul Doolan had gone all out to bring him in from Waterford. Brilliant goalkeeper. Don't realise how good he was. He came back and played in that charity game, and he was a joke. And then
still good.
Yeah, he was just smacking the ball all over the shop. I was like, "Do you want me to take it?" "Nah, you're all right." Hitting more accurate than me. I was like, "Great ball," and just running off, thinking I wouldn't have been able to hit that. But we had Gary Rogers had been at Drogheda, and Gary Rogers goes on to have a great career in League of Ireland. But Dan at the time was better than him, and Dan got suspended for 3 games. And when the suspension was up, Gary hadn't conceded a goal in the 3 games. We kept 3 clean sheets. Played in front of a good back forward at the time, but but we're going, what does he do? He just put Dan straight back in.
Yeah,
he's like, he's my keeper. Like,
yeah, he's my number one.
He's my number one.
Yeah, and
Gary left the following year, I think, or the year after. But he was like, no, Dan's my number one. Now Dan ended up getting a really bad hip injury. Where I'm thinking, geez, we could do a guy's back now, but that was Paul's thing of he's been number one.
Yeah. Like maybe it's just my personality, but I prefer someone who's just up front of me and, like treat me like an adult. Like, if I think, and I feel like Ramsdale, I don't know him obviously, but I feel like that's his personality as well, is that if he said to Ramsdale, look, I'm bringing Raya in, he's going to be my first choice because he shows attributes, but if you improve, you'll be my number one and I'll trust you, but you're going to have to prove it to me now. Whereas like, I just think the nonsense
coaching's tough like that.
I know, yeah. I know it's not always as clear.
Yeah, because you have to, like, they're gonna need him at some stage. They're gonna need Ramsdale at some stage. And if you're that up front from him and he goes, right, I'm going, and you call in someone else that costs you, you're gonna get asked the question, why didn't you tip him along? Like, it is. Like,
I agree with you though, but when you say, but it wasn't that much of a calamitous. There weren't calamitous mistakes on Sunday. I mean, I think a lot of credit has to go to Declan Rice. That was some finish.
That's a great finish.
It was an absolutely brilliant finish.
That was their first shot on target in the game. That's how poor they were.
Yeah.
But it sparked them, didn't it? It gave them a
And that shows you where Arsenal are at the moment. I suppose they have that resilience about them, don't they? They've been touted as the closest challengers to City. They go 2-0 down in a London derby against a revived Chelsea. And yet, they still come back and still get the draw.
Just expecting Kanu to come on, right?
yeah. Do you remember that goal?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But you are like in that. But like you said, that thing of maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Arsenal don't come back in that game. Rice sparks them with the goal. It's a mistake, but then they think, right, we're going to get one here. It does feel that there's so much on it at the moment because of the pace that City have set over the last few years, and throw Liverpool into that the year they won it as well. But like, the year Liverpool have gone toe-to-toe Man City in 2 title races, and the following year they literally fell off a cliff because to stay with them, it's just so tough. And Arsenal doing it last year, they just couldn't see it out. But they're just relentless.
They are, They are, and they won. They beat Brighton at the weekend. A fairly comfortable win in the end. Your thoughts on City and where they're at? They had a little bit of a blip there the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you can put a nice little bit of correlation between Rodri coming back and City looking very, very comfortable again.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, City are better than Brighton. It was a bigger game because of what De Zerbi is doing with Brighton at the minute. But as soon as City got the goal and then Haaland, you give him that amount of space, he's going to finish it. City are never losing from a winning position. I think that's the difference. And Brighton just look a little bit vulnerable at times when they try to take on these bigger teams. Sometimes it works out for them, like against Man United, because Man United are a shambles. But you try to go toe-to-toe with Man City and they take an early lead, that's game over from there on, really.
It's hard because I watched West Ham the week before against Brighton, and then they played Man United a couple of weeks later, and I said United should do what West Ham done to them, but United's ego and United's stature as a football club wouldn't allow them to go,
just sit in,
we're going to let you have the ball. It was probably the right way,
because didn't West Ham only have 30% possession or something?
They won 3-0,
yeah, and
all of a sudden the smaller teams are looking, going, maybe not the smaller teams as in the teams that aren't at the level of Brighton at the moment. West Ham are as big a club as Brighton, don't get me wrong, but they're looking, going, well, how you get a result against Brighton is maybe this way. Now City will never play like that against them because they've their own ego and they've their own manager that has their way. Liverpool are similar, Arsenal are the same, but United aren't in that bracket.
No, not anymore.
Like Spurs will go toe-to-toe with them. Yeah. I like Spurs. Spurs will go toe-to-toe with anyone now, and that's again his mate Ange.
We've waxed lyrical about Spurs over the last few podcasts. This is a Spurs-free zone.
It's getting me to stop talking about them.
But that thing of we're going to play, and Brighton have it. Brighton will go, look, we're not in your bracket at the moment, City, but we're going to go toe-to-toe with you because I need my players to believe that they can do it. Because if I can get them to believe that they're going to go toe-to-toe with you, they'll batter everyone else. And sometimes as you're an up-and-coming team, you need that. Support, because now they're looking at the manager going, actually he really trusts in what we're doing here because he's willing to try against Man City.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a faith in the philosophy there, yeah, for sure. I suppose if looking at other results, we have to doff our cap once again to Emery at Villa and the job he's done there. What is it, 12 home wins in a row? The last team to beat them was Arsenal back in February. And they're not just beating teams, they're hammering teams at Villa Park. And Watkins just looks sensational. Diaby's been an incredible signing. And Aston Villa, Emery.
I love Emery. I think he's class because he got a lot of stick at Arsenal.
Yeah.
And he was sort of,
I think
I would describe Unai Emery's reign at Arsenal similar to now if Eric Ten Hag's in charge when Radcliffe takes over and there's going to be loads of structural change. Arsenal was going to undergo that structural change during Emery's reign, and he did fine. He didn't do great, but he did all right, and I guess that led to people underrating him as a manager. But he's a no-nonsense football man who knows a lot about football and structures and getting things in the right place. And after Steven Gerrard at Aston Villa, there was only one way, and that was going to be up. And he just got the whole place together, got the players going again. And since he took over last November, they've had the most amount of points outside of Man City and Arsenal. So like that's how good they are. It's not just doing my research before the show, but yeah, no, they're just a really good side. Like they do again. It's sort of like the Brighton thing, where they do have their weaknesses against certain styles of play, but against most of the teams in the league, they're just better. And they're more organised, they've got good players, they've got confidence, they've got a goal scorer in Ollie Watkins, and I mean, if you got 3 out of the 4 of those things, you're probably going to do okay.
Like you touch on it. I remember someone saying it to us years ago. You're only as good as your strikers. Like you're only as good because you can have the best footballers in the world. If you don't score goals, you can have the best defence in the world. If you don't score goals,
not going to win matches.
Well, look at Brighton under Graham Potter.
Yeah,
they didn't have the striker. They tried 3 or 4 different men, and then De Zerbi comes in and inherits Evan Ferguson.
Hasn't Potter been linked with even the Ireland job?
I think he's actually been linked with the United job.
I've heard that recently because since Radcliffe has come in, apparently that's the whisper.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know what Potter. Sometimes international football is sort of the graveyard shift for management, but I think it'd be a great appointment for Ireland if you were to.
I just see them all linking other people, and I just never see his name, and you're like, he's not in work.
No,
yeah,
and he's like you never see it, and you talk about playing good football as well, but like football like that you can get behind, but like you said, it's that front foot football. That's what Ireland want to see, but I never see his name linked with it. I'm thinking, well, obviously he's still on the payroll at Chelsea, probably.
yeah, exactly. For the next 6 years.
Yeah.
But I suppose looking at the Premier League at the weekend, one of the great, I suppose we have to cling on to every little bit of hope we can as Irish fans, is Chiedozie Ogbene. He's now starting for Luton. He came into he went on a free transfer from Rotherham to Luton. Luton were snapping up all these bargains. They got Ogbene. He started the first few games on the bench, but very quickly he's become a real favourite at Kenilworth Road, and he was excellent against Forest at the weekend. A constant threat, putting in balls, beautiful, dangerous balls into the box. Like there is an end product to his game as well now. Enda, I think he's developed that, and his goal was outrageous, like an outrageous volley, like just straight into the top corner. He looks like a player who's continuously improving, and in that environment as well, and possibly could move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, well, hopefully he stays fit during the season, first off, and then hopefully he stays in the team, because I think if he stays in the Luton team throughout the season, and I expect Luton to go back down, they might be one of these ones that cling on for dear hope like Forest did last year. But I would expect Ogbene to get a move to another Premier League club next year, because he is really dangerous. He's a really dangerous player who has pace, he has power, he has intelligence as well in his runs, and he's shown at international level as well. It's not just okay, he was a good championship player, but what can he do? Like he tore Portugal apart when he was playing. Every time he plays for Ireland against the bigger sides,
well, even against
the defenders
Holland,
can't handle
Daley
him.
Blind was taken out at half time.
Yeah,
because of Ogbene in the first half.
And he's positive, and he's a good lad to have around the dressing room as well. You can't really complain anything about his personality. So I don't see any other reason why Ogbene can't just continue moving forward with his career here.
Yeah, your impressions on Ogbene?
I think you touched on one. You had a little comment when you're describing him, is that he's learning, and you can see he's learning at the level. So he's working out how to get crosses in against different defenders. He's learning at the highest level now, and he's learning quick. And that's the sign of a really good player for me, is that he has pace, power, and all that stuff that goes with it, but he's learning how to use it against different oppositions. He's a goal threat. He's a threat for obviously creative threat, that he's putting in decent crosses as well. So when you're looking at the stats as somebody who might be an analyst is looking at it from a scouting point of view, they're going to say, well, what does he guarantee? Well, he guarantees at least 6 crosses a game. his ex-goal might be, 1 out of that or 2, but that's good enough at that level that they go, right, he's somebody that can perform here. And Enda touched on it, he's continually getting better. And that's the bit, it's the improvements from where he's come from. That they go, he was playing for Limerick, Cork, and every level he's gone up at, he's able to match it. And then the longer he plays at that level, the better he gets. And that's a good thing. And that just shows you that he's a very clever and astute footballer, and that he's understanding his environment.
Must be you come from now working as a coach, Graham. Must be an absolute dream for any coach, for a player who just wants to learn, wants to improve.
Yeah, they take information in, and you're not having to say it 3 or 4 times. It's like, look, you show them once. Do you understand it? Do you understand what you're trying to, why it's achievable and how it's achievable, and then what the outcomes of that on the pitch will be if it comes off. And then it's like, you can't, as a defender, I nearly flip it, go, look, I can't stop everything, but I can, if you go here or here or here, I can minimise it. But you need to work out that, well, if I can't stop everything, how can I how do I say it when I'm a striker? Like, how do I cause damage? How do I inflict damage on you where you don't want me to be? And I think as a coach, when you're teaching them players that they understand that this is how I maximise the threat for not only myself but for the team. And I think he's a very clever footballer.
He really is. Chiedozie Ogbene, we're right behind you, Chiedozie. Continued success to him and any other Irish player in the Premier League. I mean, looking at Irish players in the Premier League this season, and Josh Cullen is still playing with Burnley. Burnley are struggling, and he is. He's our central midfielder for the national team as well. Just your opinions on Josh Cullen and what season he's having with Burnley and what he contributes to the Irish team.
I think it's difficult for him in the Premier League because of the way that Burnley play. They haven't changed. Company's not going to change, and it's starting to turn a little bit there. So I would be a little bit worried about Josh Cullen in the next couple of months if Company does depart, because he's a Vincent Kompany player. In terms of the Irish side, I think he's almost a victim of the makeup of the rest of the Irish midfielders as well, because he probably is the most tidy, the most comfortable on the ball, the safest passer and things like that, but he doesn't have that creative spark beside him. So I think a lot of the time you're relying on him to move the ball forward, progress the ball forward, and he goes backwards, and that can be quite frustrating for Irish fans. That's what he does really well. Yeah. And I just started Liam Brady's book, and the first chapter is talking about his debut against the USSR. John Giles threw him in as an 18-year-old, and Giles was playing beside him. He was the player manager at the time. And Liam Brady was talking about how every time he got the ball, John Giles was there for the pass. There was somebody beside him, and Gilesy in his forward of the book is talking about that as well. How every time Giles got the ball, Brady was in a good position and well shaped to take the ball. I don't think Josh Cullen has that beside him at the minute. With Jason Malumbi, who's a good active player, gets himself around, but he's not that controlling number 8, and that's probably what Ireland are missing, and that's probably why Josh Cullen doesn't look as good for Ireland as he maybe did for Burnley last year in the Championship. Just suppose we're coming towards the end of the podcast. Graham, obviously
already?
Yes, I know. Time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. But tell you, you obviously like Stephen has come in and was manager, and like a lot of us, like especially I suppose League of Ireland people, we were really hoping. And you've obviously worked with Stephen. He signed you for Shamrock Rovers. Your impressions on Stephen Kenny as a manager and as a man, and the job he's done at Ireland?
Yeah, you separate the two a little bit, because as a man, I have a lot of time for Stephen. I think he's one of the most sincere people you meet in the game. He wants the betterment of everyone that he comes in contact with. I think there's a genuineness to Stephen. And like I said, I wouldn't have a bad word to say about him. I remember a reporter rang me about 5 years ago and asked me to do like an anonymous story on our year at Rovers, and I was like, no, and I was like, I'm not gonna. That
was a difficult year for Rovers, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an awful year, but I was like, I said no, I was like, I was in coaching, it's tough, and I was like, I'm not gonna slaughter a guy he was about to take over the Ireland job, and how bad did it go at Rovers? And I was like, it's not me. It's not for me to do that. And coaching and managing is really, really difficult. It's a very difficult job. And I remember just being a bit like, not doing that. I wouldn't do that to anybody. As a manager of the Ireland squad, and I'm being analytical here, as in looking at it, we're too easy to play against. We're too easy to play against with and without the ball. When we have the ball, when we don't hurt teams enough, we're not as forward thinking enough, not as dynamic enough as we should be. And against us, we give away too many goals. We've conceded 30 goals in something like 27 games. We're too easy to play against with and without the ball. And there's a happy balance that you need to get. There's times in games where you need to suffer, and you're going to suffer against better teams. This, similar to what happens with United, there's an ego thing where you think we need to dominate this game. We're Ireland, we need to dominate. Well, we're not that country.
Yeah.
So there's going to be times you suffer. But it's having a structure of that suffering of like, we're going to be a counter-attack team for the next 15 minutes. And you touch on different things, and I talk to you and I don't sit with notes or anything like that. It'll come back to me come from different conversations. Pep Guardiola done an interview about 4 years ago and says, I want to be the best possession team in the world. He says, but I also want to be the best counter-attacking team in the world. I also want to be the best defensive team in the world. And it's that thing of, we want to play football, but football with a purpose. And I think we're too open with the ball, but without having enough of a threat then. If we're going to be that open, we need to be more threatening. So we don't have that. Then we don't tighten up quick enough. When teams do have the ball, we nearly get the hump and go, how are you having the ball for long? Am I going to jump and do something silly because we get frustrated? So I think the dynamics of it is completely, it's not there. How we get that identity back is that I think we should play front foot football. I think we should look to play forward as early as we can. Now, forward isn't straight into a striker with a long ball. I'm talking about we win it back and we're gonna have the tempo of the game really, really high. We're gonna try and get the ball back as quick as we can, but if we don't, we're gonna get into a shape that allows us to be secure, and then we're gonna set a way of going. And I'm sure they plan all this, but that identity of like the players that we go before, people talk about even the Roy Keane thing of Roy Keane passed the ball forward every time he got it, as much as he could, and he'd get annoyed if he didn't, and he'd be annoyed at someone else because he didn't show for it, so allowed him to pass forward. And they talk about Dennis Irwin, another one that I think goes on. What's the DNA of an Irish footballer? You look at someone like Dennis Irwin, multiple trophy winner, humble, willing to play different positions, played forward, scored loads of goals, set pieces, attacking wise, defensively good 1v1. That structure, and I'm not looking back here with rose-tinted glasses, but that thing of being a forward-thinking player, but still having a mind of going, well, we're going to be secure in what we're doing as well. And I just think we look like we don't have an identity now. We don't look like we're good defensively. We don't look like we're good attacking-wise. And I think if you can fix that and go, every team in the world is going to come up against another good team that's going to make you suffer for 15 minutes, and suffer together and get through it. And the crowd will back you because they go, oh, this is getting tough, let's go. Mm-hmm. Oh, we got a breakaway. Oh, the atmosphere changes in the game. Momentum changes because we done something. But stay in the games. And I think we've been out of too many games too early because of that.
Every time we're defending transition, it looks like the team are going to score. Like if Ireland lose
the ball, we're scrambling all the time.
It does. It looks like we're scrambling back into position, and every time it seems to be two passes and you have a shot on goal, and that's how you get through Ireland, especially the good teams. And that's like, we never look like scoring, and teams always look like scoring against us, and that's never a good sign.
Yeah, I think Stephen Kenny is like, as you just echo what Graham said, a good man and a really good coach. And I've no doubt that even if his tenure does end with Ireland, I've no doubt he will be back at the game at some level, because I'm sure there's a lot of clubs out there who'll be only too delighted to take him on board. So that is the end of episode 31 of House of Football with Sports Joe. If you're watching on YouTube, get involved in the conversation, leave us a comment below. If you're on iTunes, leave us a review. And as I said, it's spelled BRILLIANT. And I'd like to say thanks to Enda Coll and Graham Gartland. Lads, thanks very much for joining us. Cheers. And we'll see you all again very, very soon. Thank you.
You've been listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe.